The night my son-in-law looked my daughter in the eye at her own birthday dinner and told her she was too stupid to order for herself, and his sister laughed so hard she spilled her wine. I did not raise my voice. I did not throw my napkin on the table. I did not cause a scene. I smiled politely, excused myself to the restroom, and made one phone call that would dismantle everything they had spent years building. But I am getting ahead of myself. Let me start from the beginning, because stories like this do not begin with cruelty. They begin with charm, and that is what makes them so dangerous. My name is Vivian Price. I am 63 years old, and I live in a brick townhouse in Alexandria, Virginia, 15 minutes from the courthouse where I spent 31 years of my career as a family court judge. I have seen the worst of what people do to each other behind closed doors. I have read police reports that made seasoned officers leave the room. I have listened to children describe things no child should ever have to articulate. I believed, perhaps arrogantly, that my experience made me immune to being deceived, that I would recognize danger in any form, at any distance, in any disguise. I was wrong, because when danger arrived at my doorstep, it wore a tailored suit, brought expensive wine, and called me Mom. My daughter Celeste was 31 when she married Nathan Whitfield. She was an architect, the kind who believed buildings could change how communities felt about themselves. She designed affordable housing with the same passion other architects reserved for luxury towers. Her laugh could fill an entire room without trying. She argued with joy, debated with precision, and never apologized for being the smartest person at the table. Her father, my late husband Raymond, used to say that Celeste did not walk into rooms, she rearranged them just by showing up. Raymond died of pancreatic cancer when Celeste was 28. It was fast and merciless. One month he was grilling steaks in the backyard, telling his terrible jokes, singing Motown off-key while washing dishes. The next month he was gone. The grief hit Celeste, searching for something solid to hold on to, something that felt permanent in a world that had just proven nothing was. Nathan appeared at exactly the right moment, which I now understand was not coincidence. Men like him have a sense for vulnerability the way certain animals sense fear. They met at a fundraiser for urban development in Georgetown. He was a financial consultant, the kind who managed portfolios for people whose names appeared on hospital wings and university buildings. He was polished, articulate, attentive. He asked Celeste about her work and listened as if every word mattered. He remembered the names of her projects weeks later. He sent her articles about sustainable architecture with handwritten notes in the margins. He called when he said he would call. He showed up when he said he would show up. And in a season when Celeste was drowning in the absence of the most reliable man she had ever known, Nathan offered consistency. I mistook it for character. The first year of their marriage looked beautiful from the outside. They bought a renovated colonial in Falls Church. Celeste planted a garden. Nathan cooked Sunday dinners. They traveled. They laughed. When I visited, Nathan refilled my wine glass before I noticed it was empty. He asked about my cases, my retirement plans, my health. He was attentive in a way that felt almost excessive. But I told myself I was being paranoid. Old judge habits, I thought, always looking for the lie. Then his sister arrived, Pamela Whitfield, moved from Charlotte to be closer to her brother 6 months after the wedding. She was 4 years older than Nathan, divorced, sharp-tongued, and absolutely certain that she understood how marriages should function. She inserted herself into their life with surgical precision. She had opinions about the house, the furniture, the meals Celeste cooked, the hours Celeste worked, the way Celeste dressed. She delivered these opinions as advice, always smiling, always touching Celeste's arm, as if they were co-conspirators rather than adversaries. I noticed the changes slowly. Celeste stopped wearing her bold earrings, the oversized geometric ones she loved. "Too flashy," she said. "Nathan thinks they are distracting." She stopped going to her Thursday evening book club. "Nathan prefers I am home for dinner on weeknights." She stopped calling me during her lunch break. I am trying to be more present at work so I can leave earlier for Nathan. Every sentence had his name in it like a compass pointing north. One afternoon I stopped by unannounced. Celeste answered the door in a cream-colored blouse buttoned to the collar. It was August, in Virginia. The humidity was brutal. When I asked why she was dressed like that, she tugged the fabric tighter around her neck and said she was cold. Behind her, I heard Pamela's voice from the kitchen. "Is that your mother again? Tell her we are about to eat. Again." As if my presence in my own daughter's home required an excuse, I stayed for lunch. Pamela dominated the conversation, speaking about Nathan's achievements as if she were presenting evidence to a jury. "My brother provides everything for this family. My brother works harder than anyone I know. My brother deserves a wife who matches his standards." Celeste nodded along, agreeing quietly, her fork barely touching her plate. When I asked Celeste directly about a project she had been excited about, a community center in Southeast D.C., she glanced at Pamela before answering. That glance told me everything. My daughter, who had never looked to anyone for permission to speak, was checking whether it was safe to have an opinion. I drove home that afternoon, gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles ached. Something was wrong. Not the kind of wrong you could name easily. Not the kind that left bruises on skin, but the kind that left bruises on identity. My daughter was disappearing in plain sight, and the people erasing her were sitting at her own table. The birthday dinner confirmed what I had feared. It was October, a Thursday evening at a restaurant in Tyson's Corner that Nathan had chosen because he said it reflected their status. Celeste had wanted Thai food from a place near their house. Nathan told her that was not appropriate for a birthday. Pamela agreed. "You are 32 now. Time to stop eating like a college student." We sat in a private dining area. Nathan ordered appetizers without consulting anyone. When the waiter came for entrees, Celeste opened her mouth, and Nathan placed his hand on her arm. "I will order for the table," he said smoothly. "She knows what she likes but does not always know what is best." Then he looked at her and smiled, the kind of smile that is not warmth but warning. Pamela burst out laughing. She tilted her head back and laughed as if he had told the funniest joke in the world. "Oh, Nathan," she said, wiping her eyes. "You are too much. But you are right. Some women need guidance, even on their birthday." Celeste stared at her plate. Her hands were in her lap, her shoulders curved inward as if she were trying to take up less space at her own celebration. I watched. I catalogued. The waiter's discomfort. The couple at the next table who exchanged a glance, Nathan's hand still resting on Celeste's forearm, not gripping, just present, a reminder that contact could become pressure at any moment. Pamela's performance of amusement, practiced and deliberate. Then I excused myself. In the restroom, I called my former colleague, Judge Patricia Owens, who had spent 20 years on domestic violence cases before retiring. I told her what I had seen. Not just tonight, but the pattern, the isolation, the wardrobe changes, the permission-seeking, the sister functioning as enforcer. Pat listened without interrupting, then said 5 words that changed everything. "Document everything. Start tonight. Trust the pattern." I returned to the table and finished dinner with a calm that unsettled even Nathan. He studied me the way I had seen defendants study me from the stand, trying to read whether I was a threat. I gave him nothing. I complimented the food. I thanked him for choosing such a lovely restaurant. I told Pamela her dress was stunning. I hugged my daughter goodbye and whispered in her ear, "I love you exactly as you are. Do not forget that." She held on to me a second too long. That second confirmed everything. For the next 4 months, I watched and recorded. I kept a leather notebook that never left my purse. Dates, times, exact words, who was present. I visited regularly, always warm, never confrontational. I let Nathan believe I was charmed. I let Pamela believe I was harmless. I let them underestimate me completely, because in 31 years on the bench I had learned one unshakable truth. People who believe they are untouchable eventually stop being careful. The details accumulated like evidence in a trial. Nathan controlled their joint bank account. Celeste's salary was deposited into it, but she had no debit card. She received a weekly cash allowance of $200 for a woman who earned six figures as a licensed architect. I discovered this when she could not pay for her own coffee during one of our outings and whispered, embarrassed, that she had forgotten her wallet. The second time it happened, I knew it was not forgetfulness. Pamela managed their social calendar. She decided which friends were appropriate, which events were worth attending, which family members deserved access. Celeste's college roommate, a woman named Diane who had been her closest friend for 13 years, was gradually excluded. Pamela told Celeste that Diane was a bad influence, too independent, too loud, the wrong energy for a woman in Celeste's position. Position. As if being Nathan's wife were a political appointment. The most chilling detail came on a Sunday afternoon. I arrived early for brunch and found Celeste in the laundry room, pressing Nathan's shirts. She was ironing the collars with a precision that bordered on fear. When I asked why she did not send them to the cleaners, she said quietly, "Nathan wants them done a certain way." Pamela showed me. If the crease is not right, he notices. Then she rolled up her sleeve to adjust the iron, and I saw it. A bruise, yellowish green, fading but unmistakable, wrapped around her upper arm like a handprint. She saw me looking. She pulled her sleeve down immediately. "I bumped into the door frame," she said. "You know how clumsy I am." My daughter had never been clumsy a single day in her life. She had the spatial awareness of someone who designed buildings for a living. She knew where every wall, every corner, every edge was at all times. I did not react. I did not cry. I did not grab her and demand the truth. Instead, I said, "That bruise looks painful. You should put arnica on it." And then I changed the subject to her garden, because I knew that pushing her in that moment would activate the defense mechanisms he had installed in her. She would protect him. Victims often do, not because they love the abuser, but because the cost of truth feels higher than the cost of silence. That night I could not sleep. I lay in the dark thinking about Raymond, about how he would have handled this. He would have driven to that house and put Nathan through a wall, but Raymond was gone, and rage without strategy is just noise. I needed a plan that would not just remove Nathan from my daughter's life, but would ensure he could never return. I called Patricia Owens again. She connected me with a domestic violence advocate named Sandra Ellis, who had helped hundreds of women leave situations exactly like this. Sandra told me something I will never forget. She said, "The most dangerous moment is when she decides to leave. That is when they escalate. We have to be ready for that." So we prepared. Sandra helped me assemble a team quietly. A forensic accountant to trace Nathan's financial control, a private investigator who specialized in domestic cases, a therapist who understood coercive control, an attorney who had won cases against men far wealthier and more connected than Nathan Whitfield. But the piece that changed everything arrived from the last person I expected. It was a Tuesday evening in February. My phone rang from an unknown number. The voice on the other end was shaking. "Mrs. Price?" "My name is Lauren. I was married to Nathan before your daughter was. I have been trying to find the courage to call you for 8 months." The room tilted. Lauren spoke for 47 minutes. She told me that she had married Nathan when she was 26, that Pamela had moved in within the first year, that the control started with suggestions and ended with bruises she still carries scars from, that Pamela had taught Nathan where to hit, so the marks would not show in sleeveless dresses. "Above the elbow," she said, her voice breaking. "Always above the elbow, always where fabric covers." Pamela called it being strategic. She told me Nathan had convinced her she was mentally unstable, that Pamela had backed him up, telling Lauren's own family that she was delusional, paranoid, dangerous. They had nearly succeeded in having her involuntarily committed. She escaped only because a neighbor heard her screaming one night and called the police. She told me that when she tried to press charges, Nathan's attorney buried her in paperwork. The case was dismissed. The record was sealed, and Pamela sent her a text message afterward that read, "You were warned." Lauren had kept everything: text messages, photographs of injuries with timestamps, medical records, a recording of Pamela coaching Nathan on how to make Lauren look unstable during their divorce proceedings. She had kept it all in a safety deposit box for 5 years, waiting for the moment it would matter. That moment had arrived. When I told Celeste, I did not do it with the recordings or the photographs. I did not ambush her with evidence. I sat with her in my living room, held her hands, and told her about Lauren. I told her about the bruises above the elbow. I watched my daughter's face change, not with shock, but with recognition, the expression of someone who has been told the name of the thing they already knew was happening but could not say out loud. She was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "Pamela showed me how to cover them. She uses a green color corrector first, then concealer, then setting powder. She said every wife learns this, eventually." I held my daughter while she cried, not the polite, contained crying she had learned in that house, but the deep, gasping, full-body crying of a woman releasing years of accumulated silence. She cried until she was empty, and then she looked at me with eyes I recognized, the eyes of the girl who had argued with city council at 13, who had redesigned her bedroom at 10 because she believed space could change how people felt. "I am ready," she said. The next 6 weeks were the hardest of both our lives. Celeste moved into my townhouse, while Nathan and Pamela were at a family event in Charlotte. Sandra coordinated the exit. By the time Nathan returned to an empty house, Celeste's belongings were in storage. A protective order had been filed, and her attorney had submitted the divorce petition along with Lauren's evidence, the financial records showing the allowance system, and my 4 months of documentation. Nathan's reaction was exactly what Sandra had predicted. First came the pleading, dozens of messages, voicemails soaked in tears and promises. "Baby, I can change. You know I love you more than anything." Then came the threats, delivered through Pamela. "If she thinks she can embarrass this family, she has no idea what we are capable of." Then came the campaign. They attacked Celeste's professional reputation. Anonymous emails were sent to her firm suggesting she was emotionally unstable. A fake social media account posted fabricated messages, supposedly from Celeste, making her sound erratic and paranoid. Pamela called Celeste's friends, weeping, saying she was worried about Celeste's mental health, that I had manipulated my daughter into leaving a loving husband. But this time, we were ready. Every email was traced. Every fake account was documented. Every phone call from Pamela was recorded in states where single-party consent applied. The private investigator discovered that Nathan had hidden assets in an LLC registered under Pamela's name. The forensic accountant found that Celeste's salary had been quietly redirected for over a year into accounts she had no access to. And then Lauren agreed to testify. The hearing lasted 3 days. Nathan arrived in a navy suit, composed, confident, flanked by an attorney who charged $800 an hour. Pamela sat behind him in the gallery, posture perfect, expression carefully calibrated to communicate concern. It did not matter. Lauren took the stand first. She spoke clearly, without anger, without performance. She described the system, the isolation, the financial control, the sister who functioned as architect of the abuse, designing the structure, managing the exits, ensuring there was nowhere to run. She showed the photographs. She played the recording of Pamela's coaching session. The courtroom went silent in a way I had only experienced a handful of times in my career. The silence of people confronting something they cannot unsee. Celeste testified next. She described the birthday dinner, the shirt ironing, the allowance, the bruises above the elbow. She described Pamela sitting beside her at the bathroom mirror, gently blending concealer over a mark shaped like Nathan's fingers, saying, "See? Like it never happened. That is the secret to a lasting marriage." 3 jurors looked away. 1 wiped her eyes. Nathan's attorney attempted to portray both women as vindictive. The judge was unimpressed. The evidence was overwhelming, not because any single piece was dramatic, but because the pattern was undeniable. The same methods, the same language, the same sister orchestrating the same destruction, years apart, with different women. Nathan was charged with assault and coercive control under Virginia's updated domestic violence statute. Pamela was named as a co-conspirator in the financial fraud case. Nathan received 4 years. Pamela received 2 years plus mandatory counseling and a permanent restraining order. When the verdict was read, Pamela turned to look at me from across the courtroom. Her expression was not defeat. It was disbelief. She had truly believed they were untouchable. She had spent her entire adult life building a system that depended on silence, and she could not comprehend that silence had finally broken. I held her gaze until she looked away. 4 years have passed since that October birthday dinner. Celeste lives in a loft apartment in Old Town Alexandria, 3 blocks from the Potomac. She told me once that she spent so long in a house where the curtains were always drawn that open windows feel like a form of breathing. She returned to architecture. Last spring, her firm won a competition to design a community wellness center in Southeast D.C., the same neighborhood where her original project had been taken from her. She cried when she told me, not from sadness, but from the overwhelming feeling of reclaiming something she thought had been permanently stolen. She runs along the river on Saturday mornings. She wears whatever earrings she wants. She orders her own food at restaurants and does not look at anyone before speaking. These things sound ordinary, and they are. That is the point. Ordinary is what abuse steals first, and what healing returns last. She is seeing someone. A man named James, who teaches history at a high school in Arlington. The first time he raised his voice during a disagreement, not at her, just in frustration at a situation, he stopped himself immediately. He sat down, took a breath, and said, "I am sorry. That was louder than it needed to be. Can we start over?" Celeste told me about it that evening, and her voice was steady, almost amazed. She said, "He noticed before I even flinched. That is what safety sounds like. Not the absence of conflict, but the presence of awareness." Lauren and Celeste are friends now. They meet for coffee once a month. They do not talk about Nathan often. They talk about their work, their gardens, their lives. 2 women who survived the same system, rebuilt themselves separately, and found each other on the other side. As for me, I wrote this story because silence is a luxury I can no longer afford. Not when I know there are women sitting at dinner tables right now, editing themselves, shrinking their laughter, asking permission to exist in their own homes. Not when I know there are mothers watching their daughters disappear and telling themselves it is normal. It is just marriage. It is not my place to interfere. It is your place. It has always been your place. Pamela once told Celeste that every wife learns to cover bruises eventually. I want every woman listening to know that the only thing you need to learn is that you deserve to be seen completely, every mark, every scar, every truth, without apology. Before I go, let me leave you with 5 lessons this story taught our family. First, abuse does not always begin with a fist. It begins with a suggestion that you are not enough as you are. Pay attention to the person who wants to improve you before they have even learned who you are. Second, The enabler is sometimes more dangerous than the abuser. Pamela never raised her hand, but she built the cage. Watch for the person who normalizes what should alarm you. Third, financial control is violence. If someone takes away your ability to buy your own coffee, they have taken away your ability to leave. Guard your independence like your life depends on it, because it does. Fourth, documentation is power. Write it down. Save the messages. Take the photographs. Keep the records in a place only you can access. The day will come when your word alone is not enough, and the evidence will speak for you. Fifth, leaving is the most dangerous part, but staying is the most permanent damage. Build your team before you make your move. You do not have to do this alone. You were never supposed to do this alone. If this story stayed with you, I need you to do something, not for me. For the woman in your life who has been getting quieter, who has been changing how she dresses, who has been canceling plans, who has stopped laughing the way she used to. Ask her if she is safe, and if she says yes too quickly, ask again. Sometimes the second question is the one that saves a life. What lesson did you take from this story, and what city are you listening from? Leave it in the comments below. Your voice might be the one that helps someone else finally use theirs, and if you believe stories like this need to be heard, share this with someone who needs it today.